peers incorporate the Samsung Galaxy A32 5G, the OnePlus Nord N10 5G, and the Nokia X10. All the more as of late in 2022. We've seen the send-off of the Poco M4 Pro 5G and the Realme 9 5G at a similar RRP. So what, all things considered, could Oppo at any point do to say something in such a firmly battled field? Design and screen. Plastic yet strong form. Solid unique finger impression sensor. 90Hz and FHD plus LCD. The Oppo A74 5G design is profoundly by the books. Try not to expect any of the once-in-a-while eye-getting twists of Xiaomi's Poco line here. Like most other financial plan Oppo phones, it's not difficult to hold, with an adjusted back and sides and normal 162.9x 74.7x 8.4mm aspect. It weighs 190 grams, which is the right half of weighty. The phone doesn't feel somewhat premium. Nonetheless, its sparkly plastic back is a little damp in the hand, while a somewhat reflected split finish that runs from intelligent dark at the base to a marginally shimmering tone at the top wears your oily fingerprints like symbols of honor. Oppo hasn't endeavored any extravagant design stunts with the camera module either, which takes on the respected square-shaped plateau look. There's a decent solid unique mark sensor reserved behind the power button along the right-hand edge, and I value the way that the volume controls are on the contrary edge as opposed to all bunched together. On the base edge of the phone sits the required 3.5mm headphone jack, which is essentially a given on less expensive phones. This is additionally where you'll find the phone's single speaker, and that implies there's no sound system sound. Xiaomi's Poco sub-brand frequently supplies something like this at this kind of cost, so it's somewhat of a miss. Oppo has furnished its spending plan phone with a 6.5 inches IPS LCD board. This is plainly the greatest compromise that has been arrived at in hitting that 5G objective, since the non-5G Oppo A74 delivered in different domains accompanies a dynamic OLED board. It's anything but a terrible LCD using any and all means, with a fresh 1080x24 goal and OK 480 nit top splendor. One more benefit over that 4G model is a 90Hz refresh rate instead of the swamp standard 60Hz. That is to a lesser extent a stand-apart element when the performance potential is however restricted as it seems to be here. You won't ever get the full velvety benefit of a properly determined higher refresh rate show, yet it's smooth sufficient in everyday use. Camera: 48 megapixel principal camera, 8 megapixel all-inclusive, 2 megapixel large-scale and profundity sensors. You're getting a supposed quad camera framework in the Oppo A74 5G, yet just 2 of those sensors really matter. Those are a 48 megapixel wide sensor and a 8 megapixel expansive. The other 2 sensors come in at 2 megapixels, and they handle large-scale and profundity obligations. They're to a great extent there to make up the numbers. I'm very delighted in utilizing the Oppo A74 5G's primary camera outside during a bright week. Oppo's tones are quite adjusted, without being excessively flashy. Taken care of with a lot of light, my snaps would in general convey nice detail. Definitely, when the light begins to drop, so too does the nature of the shots. Night mode shots are very nearly an all-out discount, with sacks of grain. Similarly likewise with the Oppo A54 5G, it's one of the most horrendously terrible evening time entertainers in its group. The artificial intelligence right hand isn't dynamic naturally, as is many times the situation. When initiated, it will light up indoor shots perceptibly. I likewise found that it would apply HDR somewhat more persistently in such circumstances. Nonetheless, outside in great normal lighting, I found that this man-made intelligence right hand would exaggerate the lighting up and victory certain features. It made a portion of the reasonable skies look excessively blue, but more online entertainment commendable. It's for the most part best left off in such situations. The 8 megapixel all-inclusive is a seriously restricted part by examination. Shots taken with this sensor looked strikingly dimmer and murkier than those caught with the fundamental sensor, with significantly less equilibrium and dynamic reach. It's great to have the choice of a more extensive point, yet you'll probably wind up depending on the principal sensor for by far most of your shots. There's no devoted fax camera, so the Oppo A74 5G's 2x zoom settings depend on trimming in on that fundamental sensor. There are adequate pixels to make these usable, however they're distractingly fluffy past 2x. Performance: Snapdragon 485G, 6GB of smash, ColorOS 11.1 on Android 11. Very much like the previously mentioned Oppo A54 5G and the Nokia X10, the Oppo A74 5G sudden spikes in demand for Qualcomm's Snapdragon 485G chip. It's one of the lesser chips in the program, however it's adequate for most everyday errands, and it's joined by a solid 6GB of SLAM. That is reflected in a Geekbench 5 single center score of 518, which lays out clear space among this and section level phones like the Moto G22 in standard running. In the interim, a multi-center score of 1722 is comparably agreeable, if far shy of mid-valued phones like the OnePlus Nord 2T. The two scores place the Oppo A74 5G generally equivalent to the later Poco M4 Pro 5G, with its MediaTek Dimensity 810 5G chip. It falls somewhat shy of the Realme 9 5G with its Snapdragon 695 and the OnePlus Nord N10 5G with its Snapdragon 680, notwithstanding. In GPU terms, the Oppo A74 scored better compared to match the OnePlus Nord N10 5G with a 3D Mark Slingshot outrageous score of 2408 and an Untamed Life score of 977. In pragmatic terms, I had the option to run Genshin Effect on medium graphical settings at 60 FPS, and it stayed playable, while possibly not completely smooth. With regards to the Oppo A74's product, it as of now runs ColorOS 11.1 on top of Android 11. ColorOS itself is genuinely innocuous as Android skins go. Its menus are moderately perfect and unpretentious, with not so much as a Google feed screen or an application plate to occupy you from the home screen. It isn't generally so sharp or engaging as stock Android, yet it functions admirably at showing you what's significant, making it a nice first smartphone experience. Battery life: 5000 mAh battery, great for an entire day of genuinely weighty use. Slow 18-watt charger: the Oppo A74 5G packs a 5000 mAh battery, which is very nearly a standard spec at this finish of the market. Like the greater part of its opponents, it will help you through an entire day of genuinely weighty use without issue, and possibly 2 entire long periods of light use. Following a 16-hour day of moderate use, totaling 3 hours of screen on time, I was left with simply more than 60% in the tank. That is very great going, albeit a long way from an exception. An hour of Netflix streaming drained 8% of a full charge. That is equivalent to the Poco M4 Pro 5G, the Nokia X20, and numerous other contemporary Android phones. In recharging terms, Oppo has packaged its phone with a 18-watt charger. This might be an eminent development over the Oppo A54 5G's miserable 10-watt provision. However, it misses the mark concerning the 33-watt charger included, with numerous Poco and Redmi marked rivals, as well as the 30-watt charger that was packaged with the OnePlus Nord N10 5G.